Welcome to Mostly Minutia. I'm Colleen Lindell, and this is episode 42, Debt Becomes Us. In June of 2012, Hillary Carroll graduated with an MFA in cinematography from UCLA's graduate film production program. Hillary had received her bachelor's in visual arts and photography from UC San Diego. And after undergrad, having found work on movies and commercials, it only seemed apropos that getting her master's degree would be the next logical step in attainment of her dream in becoming a cinematographer. The UCLA graduate film production program is a 4-year program. Each year, they accept just 3 people into their cinematography program, and each year costs around $30,000, with quarterly tuition and living expenses. Hillary applied twice to UCLA, and on her second attempt, she was accepted. Each year, Hillary had to fill out a FAFSA, which stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And each year, 3 loans would be allocated, and these loans came in all shapes and sizes. Some loans began accruing interest immediately, while other loans accrued interest only after graduation. Regardless, each loan gained capitalized interest, and not one came with an instruction manual on how one might begin to dig oneself out of that interest. At the onset of her graduation, Hillary owed $114,000. She applied for camera assistant jobs but struggled to find work, and being at the poverty line, applied for IBR, or income-based repayment, which basically made her monthly payments very low to non-existent. Hillary faithfully made her payments, all the while her loans kept accruing interest. And at the end of each year, capitalized interest was tacked onto the principal balance of the loans, bringing each loan to an entirely new balance, with the same interest rate varying between 6.5% and 8.25%. In June of 2015, just 3 years after graduating and seeing her loans continually go up, Hillary's grand total on what she owed was $130,000. It was at that time, after much anxiety, panic attacks, tears, and frustration, that Hillary and her husband Chris decided to live frugally off his wage and make it their goal to throw every cent that Hillary made at this debt. In April of 2018, Hillary became debt-free. Hillary Carroll is from Redding, California. She has 1 brother and was raised by her mom, who is a self-employed speech pathologist. Hillary met her husband Chris at UCLA. Chris was 2 years ahead of her, also in the cinematography program. He is now the best boy at Warner Brothers Studio. Just 2 notes. There is a portion of this interview where Hillary explains some of the things that they learned at UCLA. She's going to say a bunch of cinematography type words, and at one point she's going to say, thread and load the G2. When she says thread and load, she's talking about film being threaded into a camera, and the G2 is just a type of film camera. Secondly, Hillary is also going to talk about an equation that she uses to figure out daily interest accrued on a loan. I do not want you to worry about getting that equation down. I will go over it again at the end of this episode and re-explain it. It is also in this episode's description, which you can find right now wherever you are currently listening to this episode. Here is Hillary.
UCLA was something that was difficult to attain because I had tried once and didn't get in. And I was expecting the world out of this program. It was also crazy because my mom was like, Hillary, you have to go to graduate school. She said for her, going to graduate school meant so much because not only had she gone to undergrad and been the first in her family to do so, she had an older brother. She has an older brother, my uncle. He was going to Cal Poly and was 1 quarter away from graduating and dropped out, and he was an engineer. So for my mom, being a single mom, struggling to raise my brother and I with, her job, she's self-employed. She doesn't have she has contracts, but it's not like, she's got a pension or anything. She told me, she's like, I can't help you. She's like, I want to help and I will help in any way I can, but I cannot foot the bill for you. And she was like, you have to do this, Hillary, because if you don't do graduate school, you're going to look back on your life And life goes by so quickly. She's like, I wish I would have gotten my PhD because then I could be a doctor. And then the doctors that I interface with would take me seriously. And I would be a doctor. I would just have that title. It was so meaningful to her also. And as a kid, you always want to like make your parents proud. Mm-hmm. It's so emotional, like talking about everything, because you don't know what that means. Repaying all those loans. I was never taught that. That's not what the quote unquote mandatory debt counseling that they make you take, you know, when you're signing your life away. It's not like that. They do not force you to look at what a 10-year repayment plan looks like on that much debt. On 1 year times however many years it takes you. It's a 4-year program, but there were directors there that were like 7th years. And I don't know why you would take unless you're a trust fund baby. Mm-hmm. And good on them, because I am not. And so, God damn it. Like, I was like, I'm going to finish this program, and I'm going to finish it as soon as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the promise that I made to myself when I entered UCLA. I was like, I'm gonna get this done, and I'm gonna move on with my life, you know?
Mm-hmm. But you were one of 3 people selected for that program. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like flexing the biceps in some way. It's like, yeah, I got into this program. Yeah. Like, what an honor to get into this program. And then you were just saying that you wanted to make your mom really proud.
Yeah. But I wanted to do it for myself also. I didn't go to graduate school for my mom. Even though it was, you know, even though my mom, I think, was just championing me, and she was really trying to empower me. Mm-hmm. And saying, Hillary, you're 23, like, you're really young. Mm-hmm. You should really just go for it, you know, like shoot the moon. Like, why not? Mm-hmm. And so I literally just decided to do it. And then I was really
and
how
long?
A little let down, to be quite honest.
Just because of the program, or because of what you were getting, the bang for the buck?
Yes. I think the bang for the buck. And it's really difficult to put a price tag on an education, and the price tags are getting higher and higher. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of middle class and working class families, they're looking at the price tag, and it's a cost benefit analysis now. It's not just about trying to enrich yourself and trying to follow your dreams and do what you want. Like, I mean, maybe I should have become an engineer or something. Maybe that would have allowed me to make more money. But that's not how I was raised. Mm-hmm. I wasn't raised by parents that told me you need to be a doctor or a lawyer. Mm-hmm. So at least my mom supported this dumb film production degree that I wanted to get, that's so incredibly limiting in what you can do with it. You know?
Do you really think that's true?
Well, I guess yes and no.
Have you really been able to put your degree to the test? Like, put your piece of paper to the test?
I have applied for teaching jobs.
Oh, yeah?
And I didn't even get a phone call. But I don't know if it was because I also had put that I am a union member. I think saying that you're a union member maybe scares a lot of people away from the interview process, because you know what you're worth, you know. And I talked to some of my former UCLA compatriots who did graduate from the program, and they're teaching UCLA extension classes, and they are not making money at all. And then I look back on that and I'm like, wow, that was really like, why did I think that was a viable option to take out all of this debt and not have a way to pay it back?
Well, you thought it was going to go somewhere.
Yeah. Come hell or high water, I was like, I'm going to make something of myself. And that was my mentality throughout that entire time in my life, those 3 years.
But for you were hoping to become a cinematographer, right?
That was the goal.
And then
totally.
I'm just wondering if also UCLA comes with its own support network.
Yes and no.
I'm just wondering if that was also a thought in your mind, like this will be a good place to graduate from because then I can probably get a job from here.
Yeah, I mean, you say, oh yeah, I went to UCLA. I have an MFA from UCLA, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Such a good program. And I'm like, I'm just gonna let you think that, but yeah, like, sure. There were some added things that I did get from just being at that school that I would not have otherwise had I not gone to UCLA.
So how much did you say? 1 year was $30,000. And it was a 4-year program.
Yes. And I got done in 3 years.
And was it at the onset of the first year of the program that you were like, oh, this isn't what it was all cracked up to be in my mind?
It was. So as a first year student in the graduate program, you're grouped with these 18 directors. And they basically structure the first year as a learning year for everybody.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they have a lot of people that have no film experience at all. On the whole,
in the master's program?
oh my gosh, there were so many people that were doing this as like a second career. You know, they got their undergrad degree in poli-sci or something like that. And they were, you know, like marketing something or others or salespeople. And then we had like a former ER nurse that was like, yeah, I want to tell stories.
So she went to the directing program.
And so she went to I shot her advanced film. And she's an amazing person. Like, nobody liked her. Nobody really liked me either. It was very cliquey. But I think it was because I had more experience and I wasn't afraid to speak my mind. If people were being mean or cruel, I let them know. I said, this is a communicative art and it is a collective art form. It's a team art form. Help each other out.
No, what does 30 grand cover in a year? Are you also having to pay out of pocket for your films? Because film is expensive and locations are expensive.
So everything so basically the cost of tuition is covered. I took out additional monies for living expenses and then also just production costs because they give you an average figure of what you're going to spend out of pocket for the films that you do. Granted, we were allowed to use camera packages that the program has. We were allowed to use lighting. There were lighting packages, which was great. We had editing suites that we could use that had Final Cut. Mixing rooms. There was basic color correction, programs that we could learn. There was even an ADR Foley stage that we could use, which was awesome.
That is awesome.
So
that's very cool.
Yeah. I mean, like, granted, everything was set up in-house. And there are 3 sound stages also at UCLA, like working sound stages. And they were built by the Fox cinematographers that taught at UCLA in the 1960s. And that's when my mentor was going to UCLA, who graduated with Francis Ford Coppola. He remembers what it was like then. And he said, yeah, we had Fox studio cinematographers teaching us. Granted, we didn't have Fox studio cinematographers teaching us when I went.
Yeah. When did you discover, what was it about it in the first year that you were like, okay, this is not...
It felt
but you couldn't drop out then, right? If you wanted to, like, you wanted to finish this program.
I could have dropped out. I would have had to repay that 30 grand. So it's like I'm out 30 grand and no degree. That really didn't sit well with me. And so when I kind of realized it, everyone was fine. It was just, I don't think anybody trusted me. And I don't know why. There was this attitude where there were cinematographers that were older in the program. Like, I was a first year, but there were like 4th year, 5th year cinematographers. And they poached films away from me and my other cinematographers that were in the year with me. They poached films away from us. So in the second year, you're supposed to be shooting director's advanced films. And that means the second year directors have an advanced film that they have to do. And that's probably like a 15 to 30 minute short. You know, they're paying for everything out of their own pocket. And the directing faculty straight up told them, you don't have to use the cinematographers in your year. They don't really know anything anyway.
What?
Yeah. But how in the world am I supposed to get any better if I'm not shooting films?
Right.
So it was like we were beholden to these directors, and it was like a big popularity contest. You know, it's like the more knowledgeable, quote unquote, more popular cinematographers got most of the films in my year. And I shot one film my second year. And I was thinking, I'm like, I'm not paying $30,000 to just shoot one film. And what the fuck? And the cinematography faculty they refused to stand up for us. They said, well, just keep trying. Fuck you. I'm paying good money to go here.
Yeah.
So that was also when I was like, fuck this school. I'm not going to give them any more of my money than I absolutely need to. So fortunately, well, second year is when you try to start advancing to candidacy. So I basically had that mentorship that I was telling you about with that cinematographer. He's an ASC member. His name's Steve Biram. He's radical. We would have like 12 hours on a Saturday where we would thread and load, you know, the G2. He would have me bring in a couple people. I would bring in Chris regularly and some of my other cinematography friends in the program. We would do like dolly exercises. We would do lighting stuff. He would go up on the green beds with me. Granted, he was 70 years old, going on the green beds, like moving 10Ks and 5Ks. Like it was no big thing. Rigging Kino flows and off the green beds and stuff. And he was just like so incredibly knowledgeable and just willing to give, you know.
He was like your little gemstone that you found there.
Thank God.
Yeah.
And he was only there for 3 years. So he had somebody the year before and then the year after me. And I basically had 20 weeks with him. And then the Arri Alexa had come out when I was starting to prepare my thesis packet and trying to figure out what I wanted to explore and learn. So I was thinking, oh my gosh, this camera seems amazing, and I'm just going to advance to candidacy and then pitch this project to the people at Arri. And so one of the cinematography faculty members kind of knew the VP in charge of the camera systems at Arri in Burbank. So he put me into contact with him. He's like, here's his name, here's his email. I set up a meeting with him. I pitched him my project, and he said, oh, this is great. We just bought the building next door. That's like our creative space. We have an Alexa. You're going to have to build like a set because it's just kind of like brick wall and cement floor. But he's like, we have all this stuff. If you want to use it, please, like, that would be great. Like, he was super awesome. So I came in and took over their creative space for a whole week.
Wow.
Shot my thesis, did color palette testing with the camera system. They gave me a camera package for free, an Alexa, a brand new 18 to 80 Allura zoom that apparently was going to James Cameron after me. And it was metric. It was like going to Europe after that. So the first AC, who was a year under me in the cinematography program, he was firsting. And so I was like, I mean, you're okay with like metric marks and stuff. He's like, yeah, like that should be fine. It's okay if it's not in feet, it's in meters.
Right.
Anyway, long story short, I shot and did that really quick. I went into post immediately. It was just a bunch of MOS vignettes. So no sound was recorded. It was just a visual. I wanted to see how far you can tweak the colors in post, or if you should build in your color scheme in camera. Because with digital cameras, they render color sometimes very in a very limited spectrum. Like the 5Ds that were like all the rage in 2011 that people were shooting stuff on had a very limited scope of color. And so and exposure also, like if you messed up and you needed to like push it a couple of stops, like your highlights would be gone. Yeah. So I just wanted to understand more about that camera. Like I was like, 14 stops of latitude. Is that really true? Is it really like 35 mil film? So anyway, it was like just all of this stuff that I just wanted to learn about. And I did. And everyone at ARRI was so amazing. I got work with them after that. And that was really what I wanted to do at school. That was really what I had such a great time doing that. It was so much fun.
Was that during the third year or that was during
what I did in my third year?
So because the program was 4 years, who did you have to go to say like I'm finishing this up like in 3 years?
I told my thesis chair. So you have to have 3 professors on your thesis committee basically. And so it was the 2 cinematography professors and then another directing professor that I, had a good bond with my first year. So he agreed to be also a part of my committee, which basically means they look everything over and make sure that it all makes sense. You have to do a whole write-up about your methodology and you have to have a screening. I don't think that he realized how quickly I was going to finish. It was like 3 years and a quarter, essentially. So I made it to candidacy that spring. I shot everything over the summer in August, and immediately I only paid for 1 quarter, 1 fall quarter at UCLA, and needed to use the editing facilities. So that's basically what I paid for, was to use everything in-house to finish it and to turn it in. And then I was like, okay, bye. So I screened it, and after the screening, I had the meeting with like my chair and he said, wow, Hillary, I didn't know that you would advance and like really finish this so quickly. You really moved on this. And then I told him, I said, do you know how much it costs to go here? He said, maybe I don't. And I said, I can't afford to be here any longer than I already am. And I'm already in a lot of debt right now. I'm paying for this program on my own, and it's all funded through student loans, and I gotta go. I need you to sign this and let me graduate. I literally told him that. I mean, that was kind of ballsy, I guess.
I like that you said, do you know how much it costs to go here? And he says, maybe I don't.
Maybe I don't. There's such a disconnect.
It's like time just goes by.
And people stay there forever, Colleen. They stay there for longer than 4 years. So you still kind of enroll and remain part-time student so that your loans don't go into repayment. You just keep taking them out indefinitely. And there were grants and everything that the program would allow you to apply for. But obviously all the directors got all the good grants because their thesis is a half an hour short film that they have to do. So we were always treated as like second or third class citizens, I would say, as cinematographers, which is pretty fucked up. And then of course, so as a cinematographer, you have to have your own, thesis project, but you're expected to shoot thesis films. And he was like, don't you want to wait to shoot some thesis films? And I said, well, considering I shot one advanced film and no one really forced the directors to use us, why should I wait around? I was like, I can't wait anymore. I have to leave. Like,
yeah, it's like you're like benched.
Yeah.
You're like on some sort of sports team, but you're
benched.
Yeah.
So then I graduated. That was a really incredible feeling, Colleen, because I think I was one of the first in my 21 person graduating class to actually walk, having attained the degree. There were a lot of people that were walking that had not attained the degree. And I had literally had to wait 6 months. I had to wait until June. I graduated December of 2011, and I had to walk I had to wait 6 months to walk June of 2012.
Wow.
My mom made me walk. I was like, Mom, I don't care about this school anymore. I'm so done with it. I was 26. I'm like, I'm going to be in debt for the rest of my life. Fuck this school. I don't even want to walk. I have to pay $200 to rent a robe. Why? My mom told me, she's like, your father talked me out of walking when I graduated from Whittier, and I'll be damned if I'm going to talk you out of it. She's like, you need to walk, because then this means that this phase in your life is done. You need this, Hillary. She said, I will not allow you to not have it. This is your moment. And I'm glad that she made me do it, because it was definitely like dumb. You know, I'm just like, oh, Mom.
I was wondering which way this was going to go. I was like, wondering if you were going to say like,
it's such a fucking dog and pony show, the commencement exercises, and it just feels so, just kind of a waste. Mm-hmm. But I am glad I did it. It felt like it was finalized. Like I could really say that I did it justice. Mm-hmm. I did it justice. You know, $130,000 student loan debt, and you fucking better walk. Do that for yourself. Seriously.
When you graduated, you said December, but 6 months later you walked.
Yes.
When did you start paying back on those loans?
That month. June.
December?
June
Oh,
of
June.
2012.
Okay.
Those 6 months were really rough.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Every year for the program, is a master's, did you have to apply for a FAFSA? Is it called FAFSA?
FAFSA, yeah.
Okay.
So whenever you are going to like some sort of higher education institution, that's what you do.
See, this is why we say loans plural.
Yes.
Because there's not one big chunk that comes your way. So this is why you had to like go into research mode and like separate all of your loans into like what you actually owed per loan and what the interest rate was. And how long did it take you before you realized, like, you know, for lack of a better phrase, you had to like grab it by the balls?
Yeah.
Because it was grabbing you by the balls.
Holy shit.
Can you just describe to the listener, like, because didn't you say that within the first, I don't know if it was like the first 6 months, it like some sort of interest had accrued?
What I did not realize until after the fact, even a couple years after my loans were in repayment, just backtracking, I put my UC San Diego loans, the $14,000, in temporary deferment. You're allowed to put your loans into deferment. They did not accrue interest while they were in deferment because of the type that they were. There are some loans that accrue interest immediately as they are dispersed to you. This is what's so crazy, Colleen, is that there were certain ways in which they allowed you to take out money, but the types of loans were different for every year. And there are different types of loans. There are what's called a graduate plus loan. That was the loan that basically starts accruing interest the second it's dispersed to you. Some loans are interest deferred. So while you are in school and enrolled full time, they do not accrue interest. They accrue interest once the grace period is over. So I had taken out a direct plus loan my first year of UCLA to the tune of $12,500. And that was immediately accruing interest. So it had accrued 3 to 4 years of interest, 4 years of interest by the time my grace period was up. And it was already $15,000 at least, times 2. Because I took out another plus loan, and the interest rate there is the worst, 8.5%.
Gosh.
It's awful.
That's highway robbery.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy.
So.
And you didn't know that. You were just like graduate plus. Well, the word plus is a good thing.
Like
has the word graduate in it.
Yes. And when it has the word graduate in it, that means the interest rate is double and they'd fuck you doubly. Because they're like, oh, you want to go to this like program to better yourself like even more than you need to, like you're going to pay for it. Like graduate students pay so much more. And our interest rates are a lot higher, around double the standard average interest rate for undergrads.
Do you know why that interest rate is so high?
No, this is the unfortunate thing. With the student loan servicer, it was Sallie Mae, and then it became Navient. Their justification, they don't say why. They just say Congress sets the student loan interest rates for federal loans. Those are the terms. You don't get to negotiate. You don't get to refinance. You can't dispel any of this in bankruptcy. And we're going to garnish your Social Security if you haven't paid it off by the time you start collecting. Those are the terms in fine print. And there were in fine print after I finally read everything through, tooth and nail. But I guess hindsight's always 20/20, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Crystal clear.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just going back to the question of like, when was the moment that you started to like really harness it and started to separate like line item by line item these loans? Because I think perhaps a lot of people who are listening feel flooded or feel drowning.
You do.
Feel confused. How did you, were you confused at all?
I mean, when you get all of your loan paperwork and there's the grand total, and then they break everything down and say, so with all of this money that you owe, your standard 10-year repayment plan is $1,400 per month. And
like all the air goes out of the room.
Oh my gosh. I was like, $1,400 a month. And in this 6-month grace period, both of my grandmothers passed away within 4 days of one another. There was a lot of stuff that was going on. I was really trying to find my place freelance also. And it was not working. It was really, really difficult. My rent was $900 a month. And I was struggling just to make that, let alone $1,400 additional. So what I did as an act of desperation is apply for this income-based repayment plan that all of these federal student loans are eligible for. And it's basically tabling your loans. So your credit score doesn't get fucked when you when they go into what's called there's default, and forbearance is defined. I believe you haven't paid your loans for 6 months, and then they officially go into default a couple months after that. Like that's kind of what it means you're delinquent. I was like, I'm not making any money. I like live at the poverty line, and I applied for income-based repayment. I filled mine out paper. And this is a yearly thing also that you have to do with income-based repayment. So I said, I have to table this. And what happened, what you were describing to me with my interest.
Yeah.
So you apply for income-based repayment, and they basically will not allow you to pay more than 10% of your adjusted gross income per year towards your loans. So with that equation, I qualified for not paying anything per month because I was literally at the poverty line. So I didn't. But in that time period, your loans kind of online, when you're looking at them, their monetary amount freezes and you do not see what the interest accrual is doing.
Oh my gosh.
This interest accrues daily on your loans. And so all these different loans had all these different interest rates ranging from 6.5% to 8.5%. They were based on, the reason why I had 11 of them is because on average per year, I was taking out 3 separate loans to cover, room and board and obviously tuition. They were all different dollar amounts. They accrued interest. Some of them didn't. Some of them were interest deferred. Then they started accruing in June of 2012. But then once June of 2013 rolled around, I noticed all of this, like my loans were suddenly higher, like $10,000 higher.
Wow.
And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I was really in the dark. I really was a very bad consumer. I did not do my homework. I did not understand what IBR really was. It's a way to imprison you more. But it literally is there because you're desperate and there are no other options. It's either that or default. And you don't want to do that.
No.
Because the interest is still going to accrue no matter what.
Well, and then if you default, then it's the credit.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And your credit's fucked.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do it again. I had to reapply again for 2013. And my loan amount that I had to pay was like $120 a month.
Okay.
So I started paying that every month, and I kept seeing my overall amount that I owed go up. It was like $118,000. And then a couple months later, it would be like $120,000. It would go up like tiny increments, and I'm like, why is it going up incrementally? Like, I don't understand. Like, what is going on? And every June, they capitalized the interest. So once June of 2014 rolled around, my loans climbed again.
Oh my gosh.
Because basically the way capitalized interest works is that your loan servicer will look at what your principal is, and then they look at how much accrued interest is currently on that loan. And what they do is they basically tack on that accrued interest. They add it to your balance.
Wow.
So that basically means not only is your overall balance higher, but then you think about that interest rate, that 8.5% on $15,000, whereas it was $12,500. And then the next year, that loan was $18,000. It went from 12.5 to 15 and change, and it kept climbing. I mean, it ballooned out of control. I think that one loan, I had two of those loans, and each loan had at least $5,000 of capitalized interest tacked onto it within those 2 years.
Wow.
And I had to reapply for income-based repayment because it was so, as a camera assistant, not working non-union, you're making like $100, maybe $200 a day. And it was a struggle. It was just so incredibly hard to make ends meet, let alone understand what the fuck was going on with my loans. Because I would call the customer service line, and every time you get somebody different, sometimes they know what they're talking about, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, there's nobody assigned to your case.
No.
That's what's weird also.
And they just basically are looking at what you're looking at online. And a lot of them really are not well, at least back then also, they were not well trained to tell people. And they, it's like, oh, go on IBR. You don't have to pay anything. So deceiving.
Right.
They don't even tell you about capitalized interest. Granted, of course, it's like in the fine print. But they don't, this is another problem. They don't give you like a schedule of payments and a breakdown of how much interest you're actually paying on this loan over the life of the loan.
Well, and that's why you had to create your own.
That's why I had to do it on my own.
Yeah. So when did you start breaking all that down?
This was, I would say about Christmas time of 2014. I was looking at everything, and I still had undergrad student loan debt to take care of. I had been paying about $200 a month on that, even though I wasn't touching UCLA. That was just so overwhelming. I was like ostrich sticking my head in the ground, can't deal. So I had about $8,000 left by December of 2014. And so I said, okay. I am going to pay this debt off now. And then I have to literally deal with this UCLA debt. I have to. I was just like, it would give me panic attacks, like thinking about it.
Now, I want to stop you just for a second. I want for you to share with the listener the story that you shared with me right before we started recording.
Oh, which one?
Well, about how you and Chris had seen some friends of yours.
Oh, yeah.
And then I have another question for you after you share that.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I have a point.
Okay, awesome. So, Chris and I, this is how I met my husband, Chris. He was pretty much at UCLA. He was 2 years ahead of me in the program. And he graduated with less student loan debt than I did. But he also finished the MFA cinematography program in the same amount of time that I did. And we both finished early because we both realized we got to move on with our lives. And this is expensive. So I really had lost track of a lot of the people that I went to graduate school with. And randomly, Chris and I are, in Culver City, sitting on a bench on a Sunday morning, enjoying a little coffee treat. Because I was like, the one thing that we allow ourselves is coffee out on the weekend. It's our one fun little yuck on the weekend that we indulge in. So we see these two directors that were in my year at UCLA. We stop and say hi. We kind of like are catching up a little bit. And they were living up in and around San Francisco. And one of them is working for Google as an internal videographer. And he's like a permalancer. So Google's paying him, but he's not technically an employee. And he doesn't receive health benefits from the company. And he told me that his loans have been in deferment for so long that his overall balance he's just ignoring. And I asked him, I was like, how much do you owe? He said somewhere in the ballpark about $350,000 because of all of the interest accruing. It broke my heart. And then it made me feel better because I'm like, whoa, at least I don't have that much debt. Shit.
But you said also that he was paying so much in rent.
And he was like only paying rent. And that's why
he couldn't really pay his loans because he was paying his rent.
But he also chose to live alone. And he was paying but rent up there is so astronomically expensive too. It's like $3,800 a month.
Yeah. So my question for you is why, like you were saying, this would give you panic attacks. So you have this one person who's like, whatever, I can't do anything about it. I'm just going to let it accrue and
that's just
whatever. Why do you have this ethical way about you that it's so important for you to pay back debt and to get out from underneath it? Because I think that's what the panic attacks are about, is that you take yourself so seriously. You take, making good on your word seriously.
That's exactly the way I viewed it, is that it was like, it's an ownership thing. You have to own up to your actions. And for me, I needed to see that through. Because it's like, I was the one that took on the debt. I was the one that was like, I'm going to graduate school. I want this. And, there are consequences to actions at times. And that's what you learn as a child growing up. And it's really difficult as an adult to face that head on. And I didn't want this to haunt me to the grave. This was something that literally was preventing me from moving on in my life. Like Chris and I had just gotten married, at this time. Like we got married in August of 2014 and we had paid for the wedding. Our both sets of parents were really nice and like had gifted us with, some things, but most of it was on us. And now that we had paid off our credit cards and, that was paid for, I was like, this has to go away. There is no other option. And I have to have a plan to get this gone as soon as humanly possible, because I felt like I've been in prison ever since that grace period ended. I've been in like a shit spiral of shame and it needed to end. And so I was like, I'm going to sacrifice everything. This is going to be my objective in life. And any action I do is going to make that dollar amount disappear. And so I made it my goal to understand how I was going to do that.
And how did you come to an understanding of how you're going to do it?
I mean, so I paid off my undergrad debt very quickly. I paid that off within 4 months. I was like, I have some money saved up. At that point, Chris and I were both in the union, and we were finally like starting to make like human wages. And Chris was working at Warner Brothers, thank God. And we sat down and looked at our budget. And he said, I can pay on my loans and I can support us with this job. And he said, I want you to like pay this debt off. I think it was like, not only did our relationship depend on it, but it was also just like life depended on that. Because it was just like eating away at me, at us. Oh, man. Oh, it's like so hard to like revisit all of this. Because it's been gone for a couple months now, and it's still there. It's still real. Chris is still paying on his, you know, it's fucking real. And every listener that has student loan debt, I know, is nodding their head. Mm-hmm. It eats at you.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit to...
Sorry. You'd have me like snot rocketing while you're asking this question. I'm so sorry. Okay.
I'm sure there are people who are snot rocketing with you right now.
Woohoo. Okay, here we go.
You know what? I had a friend once. It was one of my roommates in college, and we would talk about credit card debt. Mm. And at that time, it was like, that was the debt for us, was credit card debt.
Yes.
And she would cry, and she would say, I hate crying about this because it's an empty cry.
Yeah.
I was never really sure what she meant about that, but I have to think it's almost like, why should anyone have to shed a tear about something like this? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like a man-made thing.
I think that
it's not about love or like relationships or friends or family. It's like, God.
But the debt literally becomes an appendage to you. Mm-hmm. And it is something that influences your life to where, you know, Chris and I have not taken a honeymoon. We have not taken a real vacation. We don't eat out often at all. Mm-hmm. And we don't have kids. That's an added expense. I mean, it's like you look at it affects you. Mm-hmm. It affects your day to day. So I see what your friend is dealing with. It feels empty. You feel empty. Mm-hmm. You feel like your self-worth is in that negative dollar amount. Like, that's my negative worth. Mm-hmm. I went to school, but I have like a negative worth right now. And you feel it. Mm-hmm. That's your self-worth. Negative. So after I paid that $8,000 off and I got the final letter saying I had paid off my loans from undergrad, I was like, okay, it's time to log in to Sallie Mae, and I'm not going to log off until I understand what the fuck is going on with these loans. Mm-hmm. I needed to understand it because it's like how, you know, it's like you just look at this dollar amount and it overwhelms you so much to where you don't even want to think about what it's going to take to undo all of that. Mm-hmm. And then you think about the path that you have to take to undo all of that. And it's such delayed gratification. Mm-hmm. So I looked at everything, all of the different dollar amounts, how all of the interest was accruing and shaking out. And I was like, okay, so the next couple of months, I'm going to spend making sure that I stay on top of the interest. And my loans at their worst, this was now April of 2015, when I was starting to understand this. And as of May of 2015, I was done with undergrad and I really started to tackle UCLA full on 100%. And at the worst, my loans were accruing $800 a month. That's just interest.
Wow.
Alone. Not even getting your principal down.
Oh my God.
Oh God. It's awful.
Monthly, what were you throwing at the loans?
Initially, it was in the ballpark of $1,500. I was trying. Whatever I made, I threw at it monthly with the film gigs that I was working, with the shows that I was working on. And initially it was not that much, but I thought, okay, like I'm going to tackle this interest. So I'm going to pay at least $800 a month. And then I had, you know, these small little loans, the 2 loans that I had my last quarter of UCLA, they were like, one was $4,000. The other one was like $2,800. And I said, okay, I'm going to pay off the $2,800 one first. That's just what I'm going to do. And I achieved that
Right, because you could
3
pay
months.
them like singly like that,
Yes.
and cross them off the list
Yes.
because they were all itemized loans.
Yes. And so I think it was like, for some people, loan consolidation works for them. Chris had consolidated his loans into 3 different loans. But for me, it was all too overwhelming. And the process of doing income-based repayment and having to apply for that, I just didn't want to go through all of that paperwork. Then you have to go, while that process is happening, you have to pay your 10-year repayment plan before they determine what your new loan amount is going to be. So I just said, fuck it. I'm just going to, I know this. I'm going to get to know this. And this is going to be my path. It might not work for everybody, but it worked for me. So I paid off loan 11 first.
Oh my God, they have
loan 11
names.
Yeah, they do.
And their names are numbers.
Yes, their names are numbers. So then I'm like, okay.
How much was that one of you?
It was like $2,800.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I just, would throw about $700 a month onto that loan until it was done. And then I'm like, okay. So instead of $128,600, I now owe $26,000 or something like that. It had gone down a smidge. And I'm like, okay, at least it's not going up.
Oh my gosh, it's like the little victories.
Oh, the little ones.
Geez.
Yeah. And so essentially, Colleen, I regularly checked in. I would basically so I went on auto debit, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners that have the debt will understand what this is. So you can enroll in auto debit and your loan interest rate goes down 0.25% if you do this.
Oh, okay.
So, it's really a slap in the face, the 0.25% reduction for you to get on a monthly payment with them. So you say, okay, here's my bank account number, whether it's a checking or savings account. And the 5th of the month, my auto debit would pull. And this was based on what my loans originally were when the last time I had applied for income-based repayment, if I were to have a 10-year repayment plan. So they itemized all the loans and then had an auto debit loan amount for each of the loans, add them all together, and then that was $1,400.
Okay.
So my auto debit at this point was $1,400 a month.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, fuck, I think that's all I'm really able to afford. And then I would put a little bit extra on the lowest loan. And this basically was how I was living for a while until a couple other loans were paid off. So I had that $4,000 one paid off by beginning of 2016, I think.
Okay, yeah, so let's talk about 2016. So because 2016 was a cool year for you because you got employed on MasterChef for an entire year.
Oh, #blessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then...
And I met you.
And we met.
Oh, thank God.
And that's when I first started taking photos of you paying off your loan.
Yes. Do you remember I was like, okay, look, like this is how many months I'm going to be debt free if I pay $3,000 a month on them. And it was like 28 or something like that was the number.
Yeah, and I forgot the total that you owed then. Was it like 75,000 or was it higher?
So for your listeners, I'm very old school and I like I'm a visual learner and I need to see everything. So every single month I had this steno pad where every time I made a payment, I would write down what the interest was a month on my loans. And I would write down what my overall total was for that month. I'm going to look in here.
Yes.
Okay. So in January of 2016, I owed $104,848.19. I calculated what the monthly interest accrual was for every loan. And at this point, I had 9 loans. So I had loans 10 and 11 paid off. Those were the 2 lowest ones. And my total interest alone was $617.07. But my total payment that I made that month was $2,617.07. So I was putting an extra $1,000 on the next lowest loans, and they were around $5,700 each, but they were originally like $8,500. So I had already paid like a significant amount on them. And then my worst loans were still $16,000 at the time. 16 and 15 grand.
When did you start chipping at those? Was that like later in the game?
It was later that year. I think it was after loans 3 and 4 were paid off. Yeah. That was June of 2016.
Oh,
was when I
okay.
finally paid loans 3 and 4 off. And then I said, okay, so the next worst ones were the ones that were at 8.25%. And those were the worst ones that had the most capitalized interest. They were the Grad Plus loans. They had the worst interest rate. And so I said, these have got to go. I've already paid more than the original principal amount and then some. And that's how the federal government makes their money off of us, off of the lenders, is the interest that they charge.
Hillary, I don't actually even know how to ask this question. So when the baby boomers were in school.
Yeah, like our parents.
Yeah. School was affordable. And it was accessible. And it was easy for them to go to school.
Totally.
And possibly feel invested in. Have you at all run into people who belittle student debt? I'm not saying they have to be baby boomers, but people who don't understand the current situation of this time. Because I have to tell you, when I met you, I actually didn't understand it.
Oh, man. It's so pervasive. You know, it's like I read the numbers about how many Americans owe student loan debt, and it's about 47 to 50 million people. So when you look at the breakdown of our population, that's probably about 20% of people are in this debt. And collectively, we all owe $1.5 trillion.
That's crazy.
More than credit card debt. The only other type of debt is mortgage debt. And I feel like this shift really started happening. You know, the state of California basically says, well, we have to charge more in tuition because, you know, we're not getting the grant money from the state that we used to get. And so we have to make up for it somehow. But I think that there also is a shift in that the admin is bloated in all of these universities. And they make, you know, like how the head coach of the University of Michigan football team makes like $7 million or more a year or something. I mean, these salaries are incredibly inflated, and it's paid for off of the tuition that they charge the students. Like the dean of our film program was using student money to board her dog and would charter private plane flights to conferences. You know, it was like her rubbing elbows with other people trying to get money for the school. But that's the cost of doing business, right? That's the problem.
What do you want to say to people that, because I really do feel like there are people that think that the people who are owing this much debt are crybabies about, well, you're complaining about having to pay back student debt. Well, that's the kind of nation that we live in. Like, you pay for school and you got to pay it back. You know?
That was your problem. You were the one that wanted to go to school, right? You know?
But the reality is that it's very different right now compared to
when it was. Yeah.
And that's a huge, huge issue. And I feel like there's so many people who live in shame about their student debt, who are super intelligent, super capable. But what do you want to say to those, if anything, to the people who think that this generation of student or just citizens who still owe for their student debt are being whiners about it?
Oh, I mean, to those people, I say, I'm sorry, but you just don't know. I hope that this maybe will change their mind about it. Whether they went to school when my parents did, or maybe they went to school before the financial crisis, everything really started changing for universities right around the time I graduated undergrad, 2007, 2008. And that was when the interest rates were starting to get crazy. And that was when the federal government said, okay, like the mortgage crisis is happening and we need to control and curtail like how we allocate money for students that want to attend universities. And so they decided, okay, we're now going to be in charge of doling out money. And so it was the terms that were agreed upon. These people that went to school 30 years ago, you didn't have to deal with that. That was not how the structure was. And so I guess we were all wrong place at the wrong time, trying to make ourselves better and just having to agree to these terms in which we had no say in them at all whatsoever, and trying to understand why they are the way they are. I mean, Navient straight up just says on their website, Congress sets the interest rates. That's it on these federal loans. If you don't like it, you don't have to borrow the money. But if you need the money, you need the money, and these are the terms. And so I really do feel for the people that, like me and like you, like my husband, we're hard workers, and we cannot move on with our lives until this is in control somewhat. And for a lot of people, it's so out of control that their only choice is to just ignore it. And I mean, just look at the breakdown, for those people that, say that we're a bunch of whiners, like, how's your mortgage? And the interest on your mortgage is probably 3%, 4%. Double that, tack on capitalized interest. Try to work freelance, not having a real job. I know these are my decisions. Believe me, I vote up to them.
When you got your undergraduate degree, you said something interesting. You had said you had graduated with $14,000 of debt, and you said, I thought that was manageable. And I think that's like a key phrase, to have debt that's appropriate with the time. Like $14,000 is manageable.
That's
for
manageable.
A young person just getting on their feet, getting a job.
That's
a manageable loan payment per month. What's not manageable in this time or appropriate is $130,000 of debt with a film production degree. Like that's, or any degree, really.
Any degree.
For this time.
I feel for doctors and lawyers, and, everyone's like, oh, well, they're just going to like pay it all off. No problem. But they're graduating $250,000 plus in student loans.
Will you say what you were just saying earlier about how when you got down to the final months of paying off the loans that you just started to like step up the increments a bit?
I will let you know exactly when this happened.
Okay.
Because it happened towards the end-ish. It was funny. So I did have a conversation with a Navient representative that actually seemed like they kind of knew what they were doing. They had been working there for a little while. And I was talking to them about just trying to get all of this down as quickly as possible. And they said, well, you're doing a really good job. They said, some people will make mid-month payments. And I said, mid-month payments? What do you mean? Well, in order to wipe the interest out, they'll make a mid-month payment. And then when their auto debit pulls, it will pull more principal because there's less interest that has accrued. Instead of allowing it to accrue over 30 days, you're allowing it to accrue over 10 to 15 days. Oh, and there's also an equation that I use to calculate the interest that accrued on my loans. I don't know if listeners are interested in that.
I'm sure they are.
Okay. Do you want me to give the mathematical equation?
Sure.
So I had to understand how this interest was accruing. And by that, I had to understand daily what it was accruing, and then you would multiply it by a factor of 30, and then you would get your monthly breakdown of the interest. So what the equation is, you have your principal amount, you multiply it times the interest rate that you have. So for an interest rate that's 8.25%, you multiply that by 0.0825. Then you divide it by 365 days, and then you multiply that by 30. And that is how you get how much interest your loans accrue per month. So hopefully, if there's any listeners that are in the dark about that or just want to know how to really break that down. So you had to break it down to its most minute base form and get in charge of that. Because once you see where that money is, then you can understand how your money needs to flow and be allocated. Monthly. I started doing it July of 2016.
Okay.
Was when I started making mid-month payments. That was when my loans were at about $88,000.
Okay. So you're doing beginning of the month
that was
auto
my
debit?
Absolutely must auto debit amount. It started off as $1,400, and then as you pay off loans, that loan amount would decrease, obviously. So as my auto debit would go down, I had to then justify, or I had to make up the difference. Because once, your auto debit will go down, to $1,000 a month, and then it goes down to, $800. So as you see it go down, you need to, for me, I still wanted to keep going at that $3,000 to $4,000 a month target that I was trying to make. So that was also why I decided to do a mid-month payments, is to make up that difference. So I was still making the same payment at different times in the month that it was happening. At any given time, I was allocating $500 to $1,000 on the lowest two loans. So I would have the interest be paid off with the mid-month interest. Then I would recalculate the interest. I would tack on another $2,000 to that interest amount. And then the auto debit would pull on the 5th of every month. And then that would kind of start over that whole process. So every single month I was constantly in check and seeing what's the interest accrual this month? What do I need to do with these loans, these loans, these loans? What loans, now that this loan is paid off, which one do I want to tackle next? And so it was just constantly, every single month, I was adamantly doing all of this math, laying it all out, in that notebook, and then in my loan notebook that I have. That was the way I was able to tangibly see how the money needed to be allocated.
I'm wondering if you can read. So you recently got your debt paid off.
Best day ever.
I'm wondering if you can read off of the last sheet in your notebook there.
Oh, yeah. So this is my last sheet in my loan notebook that I had. Every page was dedicated to a payment that I made. And for the last year and a half, it was 3 pages per month. And April 2018 interest. My loans at this time were $1,204.01. I had loans 5 and 6 left. Loan 5 was $633.97 with an interest rate of 6.55%. And loan 6 was $570.04 with an interest rate of 7.65%. So the total accrued interest for that month was $6.99. And I put the last payment of $1,204.01 on April 6th, 2018.
And what did you write below that?
Final student loan debt payoff made on 4/6/2018. Done. It was like any other day. Only I was like on my laptop looking at Navient. Oh, I didn't even tell you. I used to have to call Navient to make extra payments. You couldn't do it online.
Oh, interesting. So you'd have to be on hold?
Oh my God. If they paid me to be on the phone with these people, I would definitely have made at least $150, probably enough money to pay off my loans when they were at their worst, for how much time I spent either on their website or talking to somebody on their phone line. So they would give me confirmation numbers for every single payment I would make on these loans. And then it usually takes, I didn't even tell you this either. It usually takes about 3 business days for any given payment to pull. It doesn't pull immediately. So in the meanwhile, obviously, your interest is still accruing. Anyway, just something for the listeners to just understand and be aware of. So, and then also another really tricky thing that they do is when you are overpaying on your loans, like I was doing, anything overpayment, meaning anything over what my standard auto debit was. They ask you, do you want to delay future payments? Or do you want to make your next payment as scheduled? Any listener that's trying to do this, like, don't ever choose the first option if you can afford to.
Which was what again? The first option is?
The first option is to
delay payments.
Is to delay payments because your interest will still accrue and then you'll end up paying more money. In order to just beat them at their own game is to just pay as little interest as possible. That's why I wanted to pay this off as quickly as possibly, because they had already capitalized $30,000. I had to dig myself out of that 30 grand hole before I even started with the principal that I had back in 2011 when I graduated.
I think that everybody wants to know now, like, how does that feel? And what have you been doing with your newfound freedom?
Feels amazing. I don't think it really has sunk in, the fact that I can keep my money. So my bank account literally didn't move. For 3 years, I worked for free, in that every single penny I made went to the federal government. And it was very difficult for Chris to even like put anything in savings. But we made a very adult decision, and we decided to buy a little home out in the desert. And I think that's probably maybe the best gift that Chris could have given to us. It was, the money he saved with his job that allowed us to put that 20% down and to get a little home out in the desert. Something that we can call our own in addition to the pieces of paper that we have.
How do you feel about people going to get their masters now?
This is how I feel. I don't think anyone should ever have to make a decision based on whether they can afford it or not. And that is the sad reality. I really do feel for them. I feel for this current and future generations that are trying to better themselves, because the scope of our economy is ever changing. Now the new rhetoric is tech. But, there are still really like important blue collar jobs that pay well enough that obviously you don't need a 4-year degree for. And so it's just like, how do you tell some, but then that's frowned upon. When you're in your 20s, you're just starting your life. And the last thing that anyone should ever have to think about is the harsh reality, which is, how am I going to pay for my education? If my parents aren't paying it for me, and some parents will take out loans, they're called Parent Plus loans. So there are parents that have student loan debt from loans they took out for their children. And I really do think it's going to be a problem for this country in the next 20 years. Within Congress, nothing is being done. The education secretary doesn't seem to give a shit. And it's very difficult to enact policy change with this massive, crazy thing that the federal government has decided to overtake. They just see dollar signs with the interest that they're charging. And every year tuition keeps going up. And the interest rates for these loans keep going up. They're always negotiated in July, which is when student aid packages get packaged and everything. And then you find out how much you're going to need to have for the coming year. I mean, I think of people like my sister, who's 12. My dad is straight up telling her, you're going to have to go to community college for 2 years. I mean, she's only 12. It's so far away. But then again, it's only 6 years away. And no one should ever be discouraged for trying to make a life for themselves and to follow their hearts and to follow their dreams. That sounds really, really like so cornball, but it's true.
I actually think it sounds very American.
It's so American.
It sounds very hopeful.
You know, there's the right of the pursuit of happiness, whatever that may be. You have to invest in your citizens. And that's my biggest problem with both political parties, is that I do not believe that they are investing in the citizens that run this country. There are people struggling, straight up struggling. You look at the numbers of people that are in default with their loans. It's somewhere between 5 or 6 out of 10 people are in default. That's a problem that no one is addressing.
Systemic.
It is systemic. You've gotten into this mess, and there's no way to get out of it. No way, because like I mentioned earlier, you can't refi these loans like a mortgage, like a home mortgage. You can't dispel them in bankruptcy, and if you haven't paid on them by the time you start pulling Social Security, they garnish that. So they're going to get their money.
Unless people tag team.
Yeah.
Like you and Chris decided to do.
Yeah. And that was literally like because we have decent, great paying jobs with benefits.
Can you just tell listeners what Chris's job is?
Oh, yeah. So Chris also has an MFA in film production and cinematography from UCLA. He graduated 2 years before I did. And he started out freelance, just like myself. Instead of the camera department, he took the lighting route, and he was a freelance gaffer, which is the person that is the head of the lighting department on film productions, film and television productions. So he did that for a few years, and then he started to call in to the Warner Brothers like lighting department line. If they need day players on their TV shows or films, they placed him. So he would be like a condor guy. And these are the lights that would go in the lifts. He could tell you stories about it, like being 80 to 120 feet up in the air, feeling that wind, not coming down for 6 hours at a time. So you're urinating in Gatorade bottles, essentially. It's rough up there.
Yeah, it's not the Ritz, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh. I did not even, I would pray every single night he was doing a night exterior on the beach with wind. I just wanted him to come home safe every night. And that led to a full-time job because one of the guys that was there was retiring, and he was in charge of special events lighting on the lot. And so the higher-ups at the lamp dock offered that job to him. And that was game-changing for us, financially speaking, because it was a full-time Monday through Friday plus weekend work, health insurance no matter what, even though, fortunately, we've been double covered because of my work also.
Which is awesome. What an accomplishment to be a freelancer and making it.
My gosh. I mean, it's crazy, Colleen, like looking 10 years ago when I was starting UCLA. I would have never thought that this is where I would be now. And I feel incredibly grateful. And I really do utilize that degree. It really wasn't a waste. I feel like it was overpriced, but it wasn't a waste. Yeah.
Hillary, thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you.
Could you speak to people who are living in shame over their debt, and if there's anything that you'd like to say to them, any words of encouragement?
Yeah. Everyone is in shame that I've talked to about student loan debt. Everybody. Friends of mine, coworkers, strangers that I've met, everybody is. And that needs to stop. Really, it does. We're living, fortunately, in a time where there is a greater sense of empowerment. People are talking about the struggles that they're having. I think I was talking with you about this. So that money is literally the last taboo right now. Everyone's very like comfortable talking about, you know, sex, their sexual orientation or preference, all of this stuff. You know, I mean, we live in this crazy, great time, but that is literally the last taboo. I just want to tell listeners, like, you're not alone. You can do this. And I want to create a dialogue, a national dialogue, and people that have never dealt with it before. There's a dichotomy between the people that have dealt with this student loan debt and the people that have not. And the people that I've talked to that have struggled, it's like we're all in the same club or community rather. And you sacrifice a lot. You sacrifice having a family. I mean, the struggle is so real. And I know exactly how people feel. I really do feel for people that are struggling, that like don't even have meaningful work, people that are working 3 jobs and that are single mothers or fathers, and they never get to see their children. You have to pay for daycare, or maybe you have to like have them be home alone for a couple hours, you know? And then it's just like that's not, we should be ashamed of ourselves as a country, that's how people survive. And that's not even really surviving. That's literally like barely treading, keeping your nose above water, let alone your head.
Can you talk about the national conversation that you want to start, your podcast idea, and what you want to call your podcast?
Oh yeah. I've really, ever since I started paying this debt off in May of 2015, and it took me 35 months, so just a shade under 3 years to pay off this crazy amount of debt. I've always been rolling around the idea to either do some sort of docu-series or, and even like a podcast. It's like so democratized, meaning like, you know, podcasts are free. Like you can just have one. I had no idea how many people listen to podcasts until I started listening to yours. And then I got involved with listening to more. And I mean, there's a massive need for them and people love them, all different types. So the type of podcast that I would like to start is one about creating a dialogue with people that are struggling with paying student loan debt off. I want to talk to people
and hear their story. It's like everyone's got their own journey.
And the problem is like everyone has different debt depending on when you took the debt out, what type of loans you have. I mean, there's so much confusion with repayment. And I think that's why it's really, really, it's splintering people because you feel like you're alone.
What's the name of your podcast?
I have been rolling around a few names, but the one that's been sticking lately is Debt Becomes Us. Debt Becomes Us. Kind of a play on words, but it's like meant to be collective because it's all of us in some way, shape, or form. You know? So I want to unify people. It's my hope.
I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's good to have a niche. If people want to get a hold of you and would like to be on your show or have a story to share with you, how can they get a hold of you?
If people would like to get a hold of me, which I hope they do, whether it doesn't matter, I'm Los Angeles based. I don't care where you live. Please, please, please get in touch with me. I want to hear about everybody's stories. There is no story too minuscule or too unimportant. But they can reach me at Debt Becomes Us on Instagram, and the email I will get back to you on. This idea is in its very infancy, and I would really appreciate everybody's feedback in terms of how to make the show something that is helpful for everyone. Just tools and ways that we can help each other pay the debt down, just having a support network, all of the above. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this platform.
Let's go over Hillary's equation on how to calculate daily interest accrual on your loan. To figure out your daily interest accrual, you are going to take the principal amount of your loan and you're going to multiply it by your interest rate. So let's say your interest rate is 7.5%. You are going to add a 0 in front of the 7 and move your decimal point 2 spaces to the left. So that would be 0.075. You're going to multiply your principal amount by the interest rate, take that total, and you're going to divide it by 365. And that will give you your daily interest accrual. Take your daily interest number and multiply it by 30, and that will give you your monthly interest on your loan. Now, that number is going to change as you pay your loans down, and you will need to keep using that equation to figure out the new interest accrual as you pay your loan down. I've also included this equation in this episode's description as well as on my site, ColleenLindell.com. I know it's kind of hard to understand sometimes when you hear it, and when you see it, it might become a little bit more comprehensive. Again, if you would like to reach out to Hillary Carroll, and she would love to hear from you, you can send her a message on Instagram at debtbecomesus or via email at servants.no.more@gmail.com, and there are also links to these in this episode's description. Lastly, Hillary requested that I share with you my own debt story. So my story is this. I went to undergrad at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. I graduated with a BA in telecommunications and a minor in photography. My parents paid for my entire undergrad, and for that I am forever grateful. I tried to help out with keeping costs down by living on campus for 2 years, and then my junior year I worked as an RA, or a resident assistant, because if I worked as an RA I got free room and board. And then after undergrad I decided to go to film school, but I didn't want to go to a long program like UCLA. I just wanted to go somewhere that was hands-on, and I wanted to shoot films, and I didn't really want to talk film theory. I figured that was something I could do with my friends after school. So I chose Vancouver Film School because it was a 1-year immersive program, and 1 year then was $26,000. I received a small scholarship from the school, $5,000. So I applied for a $20,000 loan and a $10,000 loan for my living expenses. I was given 2 loans, one from Sallie Mae and one from American Education Services. When I graduated, they began accruing interest, and I had a very hard time finding work. And I got a job at 2 restaurants, and then I got a job at a high school in their audiovisual lab. And then after a few years of that, I began to finally get some film jobs as a production assistant, where I was making $125 a day. I eventually bought a car, which cost $14,000, and I put $4,000 down. And it wasn't until about 5 years after I graduated that I was working on commercials steadily and making decent money that I thought, you know what, for 1 year, I'm not going to save any money whatsoever. Whatever I would have put in savings, I'm just going to throw it at these loans. And so for part of 2010 and most of 2011, I put all of my money towards the loans. So in total, I owed about $40,000, and my goal for paying off the loans is that 1, I didn't want them hanging over my head, and 2, I wanted to move to LA, and I didn't want any debt when I moved there, because I thought, I don't know what's going to happen in my future, and I just want a clean slate. By the end of 2011, I was debt-free. Now, this being said, even though I had debt, I was not aware until I met Hillary. I was not aware of the student debt crisis or the predatory lending that's taking place currently. So part of me wanting to make this episode was to understand, and I wanted to understand a bit more about the federal government loans that are being dispersed. And now I can say I have the inklings of understanding this just a bit more. But I would say please, please, please reach out to Hillary or even reach out to me and please share your experience. Whatever stage you're in, please don't be alone or don't be ashamed. Reach out and touch someone. We would love to hear from you. The track playing underneath this is called Wonder Cycle. It's by Chris Zabriskie, off his album Divider. You can find more music by Chris at chriszabriskie.com. There's also a link in this episode's description. This episode of Mostly Minutia was recorded on location in Culver City, Los Angeles, California.